They say that a hero could save us. I'm not gonna stand here and wait.
Alrighty, so should Sony sell Spider-Man? Now, a little bit of preface beforehand for those unfamiliar. This is a sequel, a spiritual sequel anyway, to our Fantastic Four episode we did as a collective.
Oh yeah, that was a great episode.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's on the Four Nerds by Nerds feed, right?
Yeah. If you want
Yeah.
to check that episode out, these two lovely fellas came on. We talked about if Marvel can save the Fantastic Four and what direction they should go in, and what has worked in the past they could redo, and what changes they should make to avoid any mistakes that have already happened.
Yeah.
Mistakes were made?
One.
I'd say possibly half an episode's worth of mistakes were made.
At least. All right. This time round, it is, should Sony sell the rights to Spider-Man and associated characters to Marvel Studios, to billionaire Disney?
Yes. Good night.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like this video,
We blocked off an hour for this. We only really needed 2 seconds.
No, seriously, I think they should. And there's a lot of reasons behind that. I'm not sure if you guys will agree with my reasoning or not.
That's why we're here. We're having a back and forth, a conversation.
So there's multiple levels here. And just tell me to shut up whenever you want to jump in. That's fine, because I'll talk all night. So Sony, the rumor has been, Sony has been struggling a little bit from the financial perspective. The cash infusion that they get from selling off Spider-Man gives them some wiggle room, because we know it's not going to be cheap. It's going to be a couple $2 billion, I'm sure, right? Secondly, I feel like as a consumer, I trust what the House of Mouse is doing with Spider-Man. Like, you can see that influence more than what Sony has done, because Sony has given us time-honored classics like Spider-Man 3 and Amazing Spider-Man 2. You know, it's not that they're terrible movies.
Yes, they are.
I was trying to be nice. You're right.
So I wouldn't say they're terrible. They're of their time, of their piece. They don't hold up, is how I would phrase it.
If I said they never did,
I would call you the contrarian of contrarians.
look,
He's reading my mind.
Spider-Man 3, I would look. I'm a
If
huge
you're going to
Spider-Man.
sit here and tell me Spider-Man 3 is better than Spider-Man 1, we're going to have an issue.
Oh no.
Oh,
No,
okay.
that
Oh,
movie's
okay.
awful. That movie's one of the worst things I've ever seen. It's just, it was a mess. It was a mess, and which is one of the things that has me a little concerned about No Way Home, right? There's a lot going on. Do I have a little more faith that Disney pulls it off properly? I do. I'm not in love with it, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. The other thing that I really kind of care about is what Sony does from a video game perspective,
Right.
right? So they've done a really good job via Insomniac on the Spider-Man games. Have you guys played those?
Yeah, I've
yeah.
dabbled, yep.
Okay. Now, I feel like if you sell it, you have the ability then to put Spider-Man on every gaming platform where he belongs, not just on one. In my opinion, that's just me. I'm fortunate enough to have all 3 major consoles right now, PS5, Xbox Series X, and a Switch.
Right.
But not everybody does. And some people love Spider-Man and you can't find a PS5 or don't want a PS4 for whatever reason, it's fine. If you can't get it, that's a problem. So Disney would have the ability to make more money on a whole, but we might see a suffering of quality unless for some reason or another Insomniac shook free, which is a completely different conversation. But I feel like there's more pluses than minuses. Like, I can't think of a good reason for Sony to keep any Spider-Man related property. Have you seen Venom?
I've seen them both.
Whew, man, that second one was hard. It was a hard watch for me anyway. But yeah, I just feel like Disney could do better quality stuff. I mean, I don't need a Spider-Man movie every 2 years. Like, I don't, right? But I feel like they have the ability to put out something that I would just enjoy more. There are parts of those first 2 series that I really like. But then there's other parts where I'm just like, you're hurting me, man. You're hurting me a lot.
So I will sit here as the contrarian and say Venom 1 and 2, I cannot believe I'm saying Venom 2. They're both really good popcorn flicks. They're meant to be as rock and roll as you can get away with in PG-13.
That's true. I felt like 2 should have been R. Like
I
it's hard
hard
for me
agree.
to do. It's hard to do Carnage and not, for lack of a better word, have more actual carnage in the movie.
Right.
Like that scene where he breaks into the asylum, Ravencroft.
Mm-hmm.
That should have been a bloody mess.
Yeah.
Like if they took that movie, gave it an R rating, and went full on horror in that section, would have blown us away. Would have blown us away.
Oh, 100%.
But-
And I don't disagree that with an R rating, Venom 2 could have come close to Logan in the money that
Logan's
it pulled
very
in.
good. Mm-hmm.
Right? Just strictly from a money perspective.
Yeah, I
However-
couldn't believe how much
Yep.
they had kind of like stuck to the formula of the first one in the sequel.
Yeah.
We had a different director. You had a bigger budget. I figured they would deviate and kind of like make it maybe feel a little different and feel a little more, like a big important movie. And I feel like the second one is on par with the first one because it's basically the same movie over again.
So we did an episode. It hasn't released yet because it's still being worked on. We joked that it's the same movie. It's essentially the same movie with better lighting. Because in that first movie, when he's fighting the other symbiote, it was like first Transformers syndrome, where you can't tell what is what and who is who.
Yeah, whose
right?
bullets belong to who? Like,
Exactly. In the second movie, it's a little more distinct and clarified. But as far as the feel of the overall movie, the plot, the character growth, it was basically the same thing. It felt like. I'm not saying it was. It just felt that way.
right. And my stance on this show is going to be Sony should keep Spidey and continue making a deal.
Ooh, why? That's the question.
Because as much as I believe in the House of Mouse, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe is a time-honored tradition at this point in time. With access to all of the characters that they have now, including everything that Fox owns and the deal that they've struck with Universal for the Hulk, you can do anything you want. That creativity, forcing you to do Iron Man because all your other A tier, you had to go down the list till you got to B and C tier to get Iron Man to start with. That pressure on creativity, once you open up all those doors, you don't need to.
I think that ship has sailed. I think no matter what, they're committed to going in their bag at this point. Like if they pump out a Wolverine and a Spider-Man movie and I don't know, pick another, just every 2 years, yeah, I can see how it can be problematic. But they just released Eternals. People didn't know who Doctor Strange was like 6 years ago.
People that claim that
we've
they
rounded
know
a
who the
corner.
Eternals don't and are lying.
Behind me, there are Eternals trade paperbacks.
I understand.
I stay deep, y'all. But yeah, I mean, I feel like Spider-Man is simply an enhancement, not a flagship, if that makes sense.
Whereas
I think
if
they're
you leave
committed
him
to-
with Sony, he becomes the flagship he so rightfully deserves.
Still deserves to be a flagship, but I feel like Sony gets lazy, right?
I feel like keeping him as a teenager kind of keeps him from being a flagship in Marvel too, is because they're never going to push him as like an adult character.
Right? In fact, it just came out that animated series is going to tell the inverse. He's going to be a kid.
Yeah,
Which I hate.
It's kind of the like Batman thing. Like, yeah, the Batman looks cool, but I'm so tired of seeing new Batman. I want a middle-aged Batman so that we can get like established characters and more into like the lore and everything like that. Like, we don't need Peter Parker to be a teenager every single time. Like, let him be an adult. Like, plenty of comic book storylines where he's 30 years old.
Yeah, I love a struggling 20-something so much because it's so much more relatable, because how many of us are or were struggling 20-somethings? It makes sense. It feels relatable. Also, if you shoot Uncle Ben one more goddamn time, we're going to have a problem. Like, I just don't,
We're going to have big issues.
I don't need it. I don't need it.
And as much as I don't feel that Sony is using all of their Spider-Man characters to the fullest extent, right? You've got a backlog of other Spider-Man characters. You've got Silk. You've got Spider-Gwen, or Ghost Spider, whatever she's fucking called now. Right? You have the clones you could play with in perspective. You've got to do that one right so I don't hate you, but...
Yeah, well, that is kind of
ruined
the thing, is that Spider-Man is big enough. His rogues gallery is, and his like side characters are big enough where it could be its own kind of cinematic universe that Sony probably won't do correctly. On the other hand, is I don't think Marvel would do it correctly either, because I don't want to see just everything be cookie cutter, which
And-
kind of looks like what we're gonna get. Like, oh, you like Daredevil? Here's Echo. Like, oh, you like Hulk? Here's She-Hulk. Like, here's a bunch of shows. Like, all of those shows Like Loki was different than WandaVision and all that, and like they started real good. But all the ones they just kind of announced and teased all kind of look exactly the same. And I don't want just like, oh, here's a new character that's kind of like this character you might have heard of, but just a little bit of a tweak. Like I don't want Marvel to get Spider-Man and then we have 20 different B Spider-Man character TV shows.
Yeah, but
where
my
they're
problem
all the
then is
same.
Sony's doing that now, but it just doesn't look great.
But it looks better because on one hand, you've got squishy Venom. And in an opposing hand, you have their ace in the hole, Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
So that would be cool, right? I'm all for Miles,
I
but
think this No Way Home's got a lot of weight to pull. This is a very dense movie. If you don't know what the fuck you're starting with.
yeah, it's long too. I don't know if you guys have seen the runtime, and it's like almost Endgame long.
Yeah, that's what Tom Holland was saying, was treat this like Spider-Man Endgame. And I'm like, that's a really weird feeling to come from Endgame, count 3, and then Endgame 2.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
where I
Yeah.
come from with Sony holding onto that property. Is it is universally acclaimed Spider-Verse. It won awards. It's one of the best animated features in the last decade for sure.
Absolutely.
And
Hands down.
Spider-Man movie.
and the more time you put in between us and Into the Spider-Verse 2, the more I hate people. That run,
True.
it sung its own praises. Like, you know, it milked from Sony's other Spider-Man movie, right? It's got Dancing Peter, no problem.
The thing that I will love, going back to your point, is the middle-aged Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Essentially, the middle-aged dad bod, down on his luck Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And it was just like, yeah, it's a little too honest for me right now, but yeah. Yeah. Look, that's one of the things I love about Spider-Man, especially, he has to deal with dating. Like, Mary Jane hasn't fallen in his lap as like a sophomore in high school.
Right.
He's struggled. When Stan Lee used to talk about Spider-Man, he used to say things like he'd finally have a good break. He'd get to schedule a date with a girl he really wanted to go out with, and then he'd get a zit, right? Like, he just loved throwing those tiny little things in there that just inconvenience the guy. It makes it more relatable because we've seen it.
Right.
So it's fun. It's one of the things I love about the character.
I think what is more likely to happen is that Marvel would just buy Sony altogether. Pretty much just for Spider-Man, but then they'd get other cool stuff like
Like the
Ghostbusters.
PS5.
Yeah.
Bad, no expense.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I am on the fence as well. Like with Sony, they'll swing for the fences, and it's not always going to be a hit.
Tell you what, there's only one story you tell with Craven, and you can't do a sequel to it.
Yeah.
I want that. But they won't. It's like they're scared to go dark with some of these, right? Like that story, it needs to be art. It's not an easy story to tell. Like, if you read it right now, you just go, holy shit, I cannot believe I just read that. If I saw this on screen, it would probably be triggering for some people.
Yep.
Of course, it's difficult, but it would also be a rich experience, right?
But you
there's
tell it as that piece.
Yeah, but I don't think either company is willing to do that right now,
Oh, absolutely
because they
not.
see Spider-Man as a PG-13 at best type of property. Like, you just won't go that dark, and sometimes you need to.
Sorry, we cut you off.
Yeah, we
No,
did.
that's
I'm
fine.
so sorry.
Like,
Well,
no, I mean, especially Marvel. Marvel's never gonna. I mean, it seems like Marvel won't even let Spider-Man hit anybody in their movies. Like, he never seems to actually get in any fights. A lot of what he does is just like zipping out of the way.
To tangent just a hair, we ranked all the Spider-Man cartoons, movies, everything, which was a wild episode. And we learned a fun fact in that episode, where it was that how dark that first episode was of the 90s cartoon with the lizard, that's allegedly scared children. And so in that season, in that show, he never threw a punch again. All he did was throw stuff.
Yeah.
Wait, he didn't kick people?
No,
I could have sworn I remembered him kicking people.
he may have kicked people, but he didn't punch anybody. I think that's where they split that hair.
That feels dumb. That doesn't feel right. Like, look, of course, the base level violence for superhero comics is a little gratuitous at times, but if you're gonna get dirty with the people in the dirt, you gotta, sling some mud.
Yeah.
It just feels weird.
Well, it's like the problem with pleasing everybody is that you can't please everybody. And at least like Sony is their own standalone company, so if they wanted to make a rated R property, they could. Like Marvel
Wouldn't.
it isn't even like we're making comic book movies. It's just a financial company. We're making a $250 million investment and we want X amount return.
Yeah.
The way to do that is to make this accessible to everybody.
The only I ever
Some
see
people's
coming from the
skeletons.
House of Mouse that would be rated R is that would be a beg and a plea from Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool himself.
No, they've already committed to that. They've already committed to it. They said that Deadpool 3 will be a hard R,
And
which
I think
it needs
Deadpool
to be.
3 sets the bar. If
and I think I think Blade needs to be a hard R.
Yeah.
It just does.
hard,
like
fucking agree. And every one of my co-hosts is also going to jump in and agree with me.
yeah, it's just necessary. I feel like the hard part is we've already grown up with these characters, and by the time Blade comes out, a lot of kids who started with Iron Man will be adults. They will be ready for something a little harder. We know that it's not all sunshine and rainbows and unbeatable Squirrel Girl. That's just not where things land often. As you get older, your tastes change, and you can't stick to teenage Spider-Man, if that makes sense,
It's also like a manipulation of the stuff they're putting out. Like, oh, we want kids to be able to watch this. We couldn't have someone say the F word, or we couldn't have someone blow their own brains out. But it's like, at the end of Infinity War, trillions of people around the universe died. Like, that's worse.
Half the population of Earth disappeared in a moment.
We watched it happen. Like, that was gut-wrenching.
And you make it sad. Hard R needs to be a part of both those properties.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they all are PG-13, so they're not for little kids.
Yeah.
No, they're
If you're
absolutely
saying
not. But
that your biggest market is like your teenage market, then they can deal with more adult themes.
I don't know, you
I'm
guys.
sure more teenagers commit suicide than adults do. Like,
Facts.
you could have
Yeah.
a character that do that in a movie and do it seriously and tastefully, and not have it be
And that's
this "oh my god" type of thing.
bringing it back. That's how you play Kraven's Last Hunt.
Yeah.
You tell it as this man who tried to accomplish everything, and this one goal he couldn't do and couldn't handle failure.
A lot of people can't, and it's sad, and it's a discussion that you need to take the time to have. But sometimes Marvel did something very well when the Marvel 616 universe started, where it was the world outside your door.
Right.
Whereas DC stayed kind of gods, like Among Us, like all the time, that type of thing. Marvel tried to be, hey, you can walk outside and witness certain aspects of this story being told.
Right.
So I feel like that plays on that relatability from Marvel, where you use that, hey, we know people are dealing with this. We know this is something that is happening all the time. Now, which company would do it? Couldn't tell you. Really couldn't. I don't know that
Hard to say.
either one really would.
Money down on it. Sony's definitely more likely to do
Because
it.
they already have the Kraven movie.
More likely, but I don't think
Marvel
they do.
will never do that. Marvel will
Because-
never do a storyline where
So
someone
Sony's
commits
got
it.
the Kraven movie in development, and I'm like, okay, so how many stories could you really tell with Kraven, right?
There are
If
a
you were
few.
to- And believe it or not, there actually is a sequel to Kraven's Last Hunt.
Yes, there is.
Don't read it. Don't go look it up. Just
I already have. You're too late.
Laura was talking to our audience.
So where were you when I needed you?
Is this like a
Right.
Dark Knight Strikes Back situation?
Yeah, don't do it, man. Just don't do it.
But no,
But it
yeah,
is
go ahead.
insulting to an audience that you have the majority of Spider-Man's villains in the movies have been responsible for their own death.
Right.
But you are saying it's more acceptable to have geniuses somehow be such buffoons that they accidentally kill themselves than to be like someone actually is so existentially crushed that they take their own life. That's a more believable storyline.
And also, let's
I
spin
would-
it this way: Iron Man had to.
Look, I will put it to you like this. Maybe just stop having villains die.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like unrealistic expectations, though. I mean,
The thing about being a hero is you're supposed to be able to find a way, right? You try to save every life because, in general, every life is precious unless you're Deadpool, in which case it's not. But I'd also argue he's not necessarily a hero. I feel like the potential for at least the attempt at rehabilitation is a more interesting angle to take. And so far, everywhere, it's like, yeah, we're just going to kill him. We're just going to kill him at the end.
or
Like,
they're
it
gonna
di-
walk off to the sunset and we'll never see him again.
Sandman.
Yeah. Well, that and yeah, they usually are responsible for their own downfall, and it's like, what's the point of Spider-Man having superpowers if he's not going to use it to beat up the bad guy and save the day? You could just take Spider-Man out of the equation, and apparently this guy would just eventually mess up and kill himself on
Yeah,
accident.
you run into a Raiders of the Lost Ark problem. If you removed
I
Indiana
was
Jones,
just
from the-
about to say that.
there you go.
Yeah.
If you removed him from the situation,
The same exact thing. The story does not change. It's frustrating. I don't know. Yes, Vulture is in jail for now, and he's the only one. He's the only one.
And he's in
And
jail in the Morbius trailer.
yeah, and that's why I don't want to share the rights anymore. If you're gonna go one way or the other, go one way or the other. But sharing the rights makes the water so muddy and it's like frustrating. What do you do?
Kind of a
Like,
good scapegoat, though, if you get a bad movie. You'd be like, oh, no, it's Sony's fault. That doesn't reflect the rest of the MCU.
And that's the problem now that we've started to mix pots, right? You could
Oh,
ignore
yeah.
Venom 1 and watch Venom 2, at least the post-credit scene.
Yeah.
Because
Best
Venom
part,
1
yeah.
is relevant.
And
Yeah.
like the other thing that I think about people who like are just jumping in now, right? And they
Right.
haven't watched the Raimi Spider-Man or the Amazing Spider-Man. They're just gonna walk into this and just be like, who the hell is that guy? Why is he here? What is Willem Dafoe doing on a hoverboard? Like, I
And
don't
why does he look like he eats babies? Like,
like we don't need to like confuse people, which is why I'm kind of concerned about this movie, and also why it's like, okay, for me as a massive crazy Spider-Man fan, as a huge comic guy, this movie has a lot of heavy lifting to do to convince me that you guys should even consider sharing the rights still.
yeah, I think sharing is
Like-
out of the question.
Well, also, like, what happens if what happened a couple of years ago happens again? Like, all of your properties have now been introduced into the MCU.
Yeah, how do you put the genie back in the bottle?
Well, Multiverse of Madness, I think that's the hinge point. You can get rid of Spider-Man, actually a combo of Multiverse of Madness and No Way Home. You can have Spider-Man just get wiped essentially from MCU existence, yet still exist in the Sony silo. I feel like it's messy. I feel like it's confusing to me as a guy who like understands multiversal type stuff.
But I also think that's the best outcome.
Maybe. I almost wish if Sony wasn't going to sell to Marvel, I think Sony should sell to another company that will,
That'll come
I
play
feel-
ball properly.
yeah, like the meanest way to say it, but make good movies, right? Like
Yeah.
Warner
and, like,
Brothers should buy the rights just to be a dick.
Yeah,
That's a terrible idea.
Putting Spider-Man's identity is a trick they played in the comics and has been back and forth for the last fucking decade because
Yeah.
editors in chief didn't want to be old.
Here's a question for you guys.
Yeah.
And it's one I bat around all the time in my head. Do you think superheroes need secret identities anymore?
None of them seem to have any right now. So
I think my opinion is you start with, and you get one kick at the cat at it is out in the public. And when you kick that cat and it's there and it's out in the open, you can't put it back, right? If you're Sam Alexander, if you're Nova, we know he's coming down the pipeline from Marvel eventually, right? They're
Eventually.
building Young
would hope
Avengers. He's there anyway.
I would hope more for Richard Rider, but I'm partial.
It looks like we're out with the old and in with the new, so this is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know.
But my
Traditional.
point still stands is, you've got a whole bunch of high school friends, or you've got a, intergalactic agency that when you come back and you reveal who you are, you don't get to put that back because that's world outside your window. You can't undo that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm interested in seeing how it plays out in No Way Home. Because how does a teenager handle being infamous? Like
Yeah.
we've seen how kids are being famous and the trouble and the parties and all that stuff.
Oh man, all you gotta do is open TikTok. Like,
yeah. But how does somebody handle being known for attempting to do good and then getting blamed for something bad? And that's probably the most interesting part of that movie to me. Not necessarily the multiversal nonsense that's going to happen. I loved when Spider-Man's was out in the open because people did roll up. He was also living in Avengers Tower
Yeah.
at the time, but it made things feel truthfully dangerous for him. He
yeah, how many times do they show up and roll up right to Yancey Street for the Fantastic Four?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I
Invade
mean,
Four Freedoms Plaza.
I wouldn't. I feel like that's a bad idea.
Yeah, I feel like when you
One of
put
the
the homestead and everybody in danger, I think you're just asking for trouble.
True, but a giant, strong as hell rock man, would you? Like, I just feel like that's a bad idea. A guy who's literally on fire, that's a terrible idea. Hey man, I've come to destroy your home.
The smartest
like,
man
"Oh,
you've
cool."
never heard of. Oh yeah, let's go knock on his door for cookies. Like,
Sue Storm could just expand a force bubble in your brain, and that's it. It's
that
over.
you're over.
Yeah, like that's one I wouldn't do. Like Avengers Mansion, yeah, there's a Norse god just hanging out there. Like,
right,
maybe
but
don't
let's,
do that. But like a guy like Daredevil,
Yeah.
he's in trouble. A guy like Spider-Man, he's well. I think I think people underestimate things about Spider-Man. Like he could punch your jaw straight off your face if you really wanted to.
Right. Like if you roll up to Foggy and Nelson
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
just go, I'm just gonna beat your blind ass.
Yeah.
Like what do you do?
Or not even that. Foggy's right there.
Yeah.
That's a problem. There's a lot going on there, and I get worried. I I don't know, man. Sony could do it, Marvel could do it, but I would almost prefer a fresh start.
Yeah.
I think a fresh start somewhere else would be best for
A theory
everybody.
we've been batting around here, and I'll give credit where credit's due, is that our very own Shino came up with it. It was like, and was smelling it from miles away kind of thing. The smell he smells is Miles in the MCU proper,
Oh yeah,
taking over.
I think that's happening.
I don't.
Why?
Because I think a trade was made. I think Sony gets to play with Spider-Man proper, right? Peter Parker.
In the MCU?
Yep. Or no,
Okay.
in their own universe,
Okay.
right? That Tom Holland's Peter Parker. And Marvel gets to play with Venom, Lethal Protector.
I would never make that trade. That would be one of the worst trades. That's Tom Brady for any lesser
bag of cat
rookie
shit.
quarterback that never has
Just
done
from
anything
what
ever.
we've seen, like he's in the Marvel universe, right? I don't care about spoiling that movie. Nobody's watching it now anyway.
I'm wondering if they made a trade to where Tom Holland's Spider-Man will stay in the MCU, and then
So-
Miles will become the Spider-Man of the Sony universe.
I
That's-
think this Spider-Man's too young to step into a mentor role, though.
Yeah, the other thing is I saw a thing where Tom Holland was like, yeah, I kind of want to be out. Like, eventually. I don't want to do this when I'm 30 and having back pain. He's not that far from 30. Like, realistically, he started this when he was a teenager, but he's no
I
longer
mean,
a teen.
me and him are the same age,
true, but
and
still
I've
not
got
that
more
far
back
from
problems
30.
than that guy.
Yeah. He doesn't want the Tobey Maguire treatment from Spider-Man because that movie was rife with him having back problems.
Yeah.
So I understand that.
And also,
So I
right
feel
with someone
like-
being high on set.
Facts. I feel like Miles is a more modern take on the character anyway.
Yep.
I just feel like he works better. I would not take Venom. I feel like you're getting short shrifted unless it's like Venom because Spider-Man straight up for Venom. Who does that? Especially after they've already made
people who are building a Thunderbolts team.
two. I mean,
That's true.
maybe.
The thing I
don't know,
want to
man.
see the most in No Way Home is I want Spider-Man 3 Venom to show up for 2 seconds, only for Tom Hardy's Venom to pop up right behind him.
Smite that guy right in his smug face. Yeah.
But I want him to do that and then absorb him to where he then gets the white spider on his chest.
That's
dope.
that's one of people's biggest complaints about the design from Venom.
Yeah.
Is
It's.
he's too goopy.
I don't mind the goop.
And neither does Eddie when it's wrapped around something. Anyway,
Hey.
they're husbands and you can't tell me otherwise. The second one is full of more gay subtext than the first one, and I'm not gonna let it go.
Don't never say it with your chest all the time. I feel like the story's just been done backwards, right? Because there's no spider, and it doesn't make sense now for them to just be like, oh yeah, now we have the spider on his chest. For what? That's actually a perfect way to do that.
It is.
Just also give me the catharsis of killing off Spider-Man 3's Venom.
Yeah.
But I pitched to you that if our Tom Hardy Venom with both voices show up, it's looking like when Peter touches a villain, they get a little bit of a makeover.
Just like a multiversal
A
shift.
MCU
into-
conversion, whatever, magic
Yeah.
shit, right? What if Peter touches Venom and he just gets it? Because that's what it would look like in the MCU if it
I
was,
suppose.
Yeah, or if he like grabs him, absorbs him, and spits him back out.
yeah.
Like, and it's just like, I got all these powers now.
It's like,
Because
oh,
I've always hated Venom when he's like basically just the Hulk. Like
Yeah.
we did a commentary for Venom, and I'm like, why is he like destroying the walls as he climbs up? He's gooey. Even without having Spider-Man powers, it would be believable that he can stick to the walls. Like he should be sticking to everything. I like a Venom that shoots web. I like a Venom that sticks to walls.
The deleted scene from Venom that's up on YouTube that Sony put out is exactly what you're looking for. He looks exactly like he did in the comics without that weird extra like shiny goo on him more. It's
Oh, really?
strange. Yeah, it's not fully VFX like the rest of the movie, but it's more of the beach scene.
It's that scene in particular. My co-host was like, "Why does he have toes?" He's watching that scene. He's like, "What? Why are they there like that?" It's so unsettling. And once he pointed it out, I was like, "Oh, that was weird."
I'll
That
tell you
was
why he's
really
got toes,
weird.
but nobody wants to hear it.
Please don't.
Nobody's ready to have that conversation.
Look, if it's gonna be uncomfortable, Let's go. Say it. Just say it.
I think Venom likes feet.
Got a big old foot fetish.
I think, listen, like, coming from a planet that's all just goop, having appendages, plug any kids' ears at the moment, like, it just really gets Venom going, just to see more appendages. The fact that we've got, like, arms and then fingers at the end of them just rocks that dude's whole world.
Bricked up like the third little piggy's house, just all the time when he sees stuff like that.
Yeah.
I know we haven't seen any of the Spider-Man yet in the movie.
Well,
but
Brazil would have you think otherwise.
Yeah, I was really hoping that Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man was going to show up with the black suit on, and I think that would have been the best possible way to go.
That costume was one of my favorites. Like, I don't like the raised webbing on the suit. I think it should just be like just a flat fabric.
I like the Amazing Spider-Man suit, even though it's different.
That's what I mean. The Amazing Spider-Man suit. Like,
yeah, I don't
the
like
mask on that is perfect. The big eyes. To me, I just love that look. So good. But
you're talking from the second movie?
No, in the first movie too. Didn't he have big eyes in that one too?
Oh, yeah,
They're bigger. They're bigger in 2.
Okay, yeah, okay.
In
They're
2,
bigger
they
and
just
more
like
bluer.
give more comic book accurate eyes onto basically the Tobey Maguire costume, and I hated it. I hate raised webbing. I think it looks awful.
No, so do I. It's a texture that doesn't need to be there. I can't explain it.
Nobody's
to
making
anyone.
that at home. Like they are
No.
now because 3D printers exist, but back then they weren't.
It feels dumb.
I think the lesson to be learned is that Marvel and Sony both do very strange things with that property, and maybe the answer is neither. Maybe the answer is somebody else.
I think the more we talk about it, I think the answer is actually neither. But if I have to lean one way or the other, I'm personally going Marvel. But again, I really think the answer is neither.
Yeah. I think eventually, just given time, eventually Marvel will own Spider-Man again. I don't think I want to see it go to anybody else because a third party would just try to do what the other two haven't already, and that's a whole mystery of stuff that we probably don't want to see.
Embrace the unknown.
I'm still of the opinion that Sony should keep on to it, at least for now. Let's get through Into the Spider-Verse 2.
Yeah.
Let's make that the perfect sequel it's always destined to be. All right, if people want to find you guys on the internet,
You could go to our website, first of all, thetwistedcape.com. Our podcasts are wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, SoundCloud, we're everywhere. On your fridge. Check out our OnlyFans. All of our
Venom's a subscriber.
Yep. It's nothing but feed pics. all of our social stuff at Twisted Cape, everywhere you find.
And our other friend here, where can they find you?
Yeah, Four Nerds by Nerds podcast. We are everywhere podcasts are found. We do a lot of movie commentaries and discussion episodes and Jeopardy and stuff like that. We are FMBN podcast on Twitter, FMBN, the number 4 and the letter U on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And then find my other show, High on Horror, if you like horror movies. We are everywhere, H on H Pod, which is Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, all that jazz.
So I wanted to say before we log off, you guys both make excellent shows and put out awesome content. And I hope all my friends that are in the chat right now come out and support you and listen to your shows and subscribe to your Twitch and all that kind of stuff. So keep doing what you're doing, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
buddy.
you so
You too.
much. And thank you for bringing everybody.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, go ahead and button mash a thumbs up. If you want to swing by when we have a new video, web up the sub button. Oh, and while you're at it, hit the bell to be notified by.